With the Hawks going up against the Cavs to get the last seed in the Eastern Conference, who do you have winning and why?
So I'm just going to be clear cut, concise here. I got Atlanta for the sheer fact of Cleveland has not been the same since the All Star break. Jared Allen has been the anchor of that team, whether on the defensive side, whether a spark in catching oops and putting people on posters, blocking shots, whatever it is that he has provided to this team. I'm looking at this and I'm saying, well, he hasn't been there in a little bit over a month. The Cavaliers have lost, I believe, 9 or 10 out of their last 12 games in the last couple of months. So you're looking at this team and you're saying this is a shell of themselves just because they're missing one person. Jared Allen doesn't even score that much, but it goes to show they live and die with that defensive presence from inside the paint, him altering shots, his presence in the pick and roll. Just everything that Jared Allen kind of brings to the table has just kind of like dwindled in terms of what the Cavaliers have been able to put out there on the court. And Darius Garland has really had to shoulder that load. Caris LeVert has not been able to perform at a consistent level. There have been games when he drops 30, but then the next game he's got 11. So there hasn't really been enough from this team for me to have faith, especially after the performance that they had against Brooklyn the other night. And granted, I know that Cleveland came back later in that game, but that seemed to be relatively in some garbage time as Kyrie went off, KD went off, and they kind of did their own thing and kind of coasted in the fourth quarter to where garbage points really didn't make it a difference. But what I'm trying to get at is Trae Young's been having a great year all season. Hasn't really been talked about. I believe he scored the most points this year and also had the most assists in the same season, which hasn't been done in NBA history in terms of Trae Young also did that in college. That is a mark that needs to be noted and needs to be respected. Trae Young is also averaging almost 29 points per game. He's averaging 9 assists per game. Trae Young is somebody to be respected, and notably so. So when you have somebody like that that's just kind of on that confidence, I mean, the Hawks were in the Eastern Conference Finals last year, and the Hawks have underperformed very much so, being, I believe, what is it, the 10th seed this year, Kyle?
They were the ninth seed.
From a top five seeded team last season all the way down to basically out of the top eight. It's a concerning year, very up and down. They had some injuries early on and definitely had some inconsistencies throughout the season, but they found a way to do what they needed to do in the first round against Charlotte, and they actually dominated almost by 30. And now you're looking at a weakened Cleveland team that is kind of looking on the outside in now at this point because one more loss and sends it packing. Um, Cleveland used to be a top three seeded team just a few months back, and we're talking about them not even making the playoffs. This may be one of the worst regular season collapses I've ever seen. I'm going with Atlanta all the way, and I don't even think it's going to be close. I think Atlanta goes and gets that 8 seed for sure, and Cleveland goes back to the drawing board once more.
Kevin, I'm in full agreement with you on this one. I got the Hawks winning this one and by a substantial margin as well. And I think it's really the point that you made about Jared Allen. If Jared Allen's not able to go in this game against the Hawks, I see Clint Capella on the other side for the Hawks just absolutely dominating the paint down low. I mean, for God's sakes, Clint Capella, he had 15 points in the game against the Hornets the other night. But the most impressive stat line that I saw from Clint Capella specifically was his rebounds. He had 17 boards in that game. And if you're faced with a situation where Cleveland does not have Jarrett Allen ready to go, I mean, for God's sakes, Clint Capella could go out there and get 20 boards if he wanted to because he's not going to face that much resistance from what the Cavs have at their disposal. And the one thing that I like about the Hawks in this matchup is that you beat the Hornets in the first play-in tournament game. But the way that they did it, I thought was extremely impressive because it wasn't just Trae Young that brought it for Atlanta in that game against the Hornets. I mean, they got great contributions from DeAndre Hunter, Danilo Gallinari, even Bogdanovich chipped in with 13 points. Clint Capella, like I said, he had 15. They were able to get good production across the board other than just Trae. And that was really what made Atlanta special last year is that they were able to get great contributions, not only from Trae Young, but they got it from Kevin Herter. They got it from Bogdanovich. They were able to get it from Clint Capella. And even though that this year in particular, the Hawks have struggled, they've been an up and down team, to say the least. I think in this matchup against Cleveland, I think they'll be able to expose just the injury riddled Cavs as far as Jared Allen not being able to go in that game. And the thing is, like about the Cavs, I want to focus on them for a second here. The Cavs, just the difference between having Jarrett Allen compared to Evan Mobley. Granted, I know Evan Mobley is kind of up and coming still. He's still relatively young in his NBA career, and he definitely has a lot of promise. It's just that Jarrett Allen is just a difference maker. He's been in the league for multiple years at this point. His veteran leadership is definitely respectable, not only with the Cavs, but across the league as well. And when you miss a presence like that, there's definitely going to be a void because of his absence. And despite the fact that Evan Mobley's been decent in stretches for Cleveland this year, it's just not the same. And when you look at the defensive issues that Cleveland, I think, is going to have against the Atlanta Hawks, I think it's going to be significant because I don't think they're going to really have a significant defensive presence in the paint 10 to 15 out 10 to 15 feet outside. And I think that's going to leave them exposed. And it's going to put guys like Darius Garland, Karis LeVert, and maybe Laurie Markkinen to a certain extent, where they're going to have to excel and go above and beyond to get them this game. Maybe even Kevin Love has to step up and play better because Kevin Love only had 14 points in that game against the Nets the other night. So they're definitely going to need more production across the board from essentially everybody outside of Darius Garland because Garland was really the one that shouldered the weight of that game against the Nets. So, I mean, overall, when I look at this game in totality, I picked the Hawks this one. I could potentially see them winning this game by 10 or 15 points, just because I think that their offensive firepower is going to be too much for Cleveland to handle. Had Jarrett Allen been in this game, I would probably side with Cleveland by a smidge, but with him not going to be in this game, I think the Hawks win this one in convincing fashion, and they get the last seed in the Eastern Conference. That's just how I see it.